Hey guys, it's Bronson. I wanted to talk to you about the worst mistakes in apartment investing my friend has made, right? No, actually, mistakes that I have made while investing in apartments. I've made some doozies. I want to share them with you. I feel like it's really vulnerable to share these, but I think this is really how we grow, right? When we share our stories, particularly the stories of things that did not go well. So I want to share those with you. I want to come clean. Really excited to do this. It's been said that a wise man learns from their own mistakes, but a genius will learn from the mistakes of others. So you have a chance to be a genius today, to learn from my mistakes. Really excited to share this with you. Stick around to the end. We've got a great quote. We'll jump right into it. All right. So let's jump in here. So the single biggest mistake that I have made in my apartment investing career is getting the wrong property manager. And the reason why this is so critical, I believe the property manager is the number one thing that will make your deal successful or not. You can have the best plans in the world, but if you are not able to implement them, you are going to have some major issues. It will just become wishful thinking, right? So we've had this issue, our team, a particular property in mind, it's in Little Rock, Arkansas. We had this property, beautiful property, as you can see here. We had this plan, we're going to come in, we're going to do all this work, we're going to have this great value add story here, and we're really excited about it, right? And we have this great property manager that we think, these guys, it's a match made in heaven, right? They have just performed well for us before. We've used them in another market. We're really excited about what we can possibly come together and do here, and it's going to be great. And they're based about 2 hours away, and we thought they're going to be great for this particular deal. So they come in, and just from the get-go, we start having major issues. I mean, they can't find their right staff. They have an issue with vendors to come in and do work on the property, contractors. They're like, oh, back in our other area, we have all kinds of vendors and all kinds of contractors come in and do this. We can't find any here because, well, you're our only property here, right? So that is an issue. So pretty quickly, we go from 90% occupied in the particular property to only 65% occupied, which really then you're at an issue of kind of a break-even point of like you're not making cash flow, you're just kind of breaking even, kind of treading water. So that causes some issues, right? Because you want to do more work, you're having issues with the particular management of the property. Now I will say this, in this particular deal, we learned because of that instance, they were a property manager that was good, they just weren't the right property manager for this particular property. Now what happened, how this played out, this is not a sad story, okay? So get your Kleenex box and put it away. We call it our underperforming, outperforming deal, right? So we bought it at around $49,000 per door. We're going to end up selling it for $89,000 a door about 2.5 years later. Now, why is that? Some of that has to do with just the market, what's happening with interest rates, what's happening with asset prices. And again, we have real estate is here. We have the global economy. We talk a lot about inflation. We talk a lot about other things. And so that we're seeing that. So the deal's performing just fine. So we're excited. Our investors are going to turn out just fine with that. But again, this is a learning experience because when you work with a property manager, it's really important that you ask the right questions. And I think in life, the quality of your life is really determined by the quality of the questions that you're able to ask yourself and you're able to ask others. So when you are working with a property manager, it's important that you ask them a few specific questions. Question number one is, in this particular market, how many units do you have? Now, if the answer is a goose egg, they have no units in that particular market. For me now, that's a deal breaker. I don't like that, hey, they're a great property manager in this market and they're gonna come to this market and you're gonna be our first and we're gonna expand and do all this stuff. And I've heard that story so many times and I hear it from a lot of newer operators now. They'll kind of say, oh yeah, we got this new property manager. For me, like I'm out. I'm not even gonna do that anymore because there's too much uncertainty in knowing how that particular property manager will perform in that particular market. So that's something that's really important that I look at. And then also it's really important that you ask, what kind of property manager is this? What type of properties are you working with? So if you're working with a large multifamily that's 200 units, do they have 5,000 units, but they're all single families? Or they're all commercial, or there's many different types of property managers out there. So it's really important that you stop and you ask the questions and say, what type of properties are you actually working with? If they're working with brand new Class A apartments that are multifamily and you're working with Class C, that's probably not going to be a good fit because there's different issues that those type of tenants and the property managers are going to deal with. So anyway, it feels good to share this story of struggle in kind of this particular area. And at the end, I'm going to give you a chance. I'd love to see in the comments some issues that you've had particularly with property managers and how to make that work. But again, good property managers are good and bad property managers are bad. That's probably the most profound thing I've said. I'll share number 2 here now. All right. So the second big mistake that I've made in multifamily investing is getting the wrong type of debt. Now, what I mean by that is there are different types of debt out there. You can get a long-term fixed rate that's more agency debt that's fixed for a long time. You can get shorter-term bridge debt, or you get variable rate debt. There's many different types of debt with all sorts of the different parameters. And if you get the wrong type of debt, it can really hurt you in the performance of a deal and how that deal actually works out in the end. So in this same particular deal, and this is not just a problem deal, but this is, again, in every deal, this deal will actually end up performing just fine. But still, there's a big problem there, right? Because the cash flow was delayed in this particular deal. And what we did as far as debt on this particular deal, our team, we basically got long-term fixed rate debt below 3%. So we got agency debt. It was fixed for 10 years. And again, which is great because we're in a time of inflation where inflation is getting higher. We have less than 3%. And this is amortized over 25 years. So we thought, this is awesome, right? This is amazing. Well, the challenge is when you start a deal, you don't always know what's going to happen in the deal and when you're going to be ready to sell or refinance. And this particular loan, it makes it very difficult to be able to sell early. So now that we're actually ready to sell early, there's something called yield maintenance. And that's a fancy term to say you have penalties if you want to sell early. Yield maintenance basically means that investors or agencies or whoever did that loan or was a part of that loan, in this case the federal government, there's stipulations that if you sell early, you're basically going to be penalized for selling early. So you can sell early, but in this particular deal, if it's a $20 million sale on the property, we're going to have to pay $1 million or $1.5 million in penalties. Ouch, right? That's like a big punch in the gut, that you didn't expect, a sucker punch. But that's the way this particular loan works. So that's something that we learned from this, and especially in this particular market, is sometimes shorter-term bridge debt can be really helpful. We've discovered there's a lot of bridge debt, at least available at the time of this video, that is shorter-term debt, typically 3 years, and it's fixed. Usually you pay more for it, so it's a higher rate, but it allows you to have flexibility when you want to sell or when you want to refinance. There are no penalties, which sounds pretty amazing. Also, this particular debt is usually extendable another year or maybe a couple years, so it gets you to about the 5-year timeline. So that's really amazing to be able to do that. So that's something we learned in this particular deal, is having options can be really, really important, and particularly if you have a syndicated type of deal or you're in a syndicated type of deal, to be able to refinance or sell when you want to do it can be really, really helpful. Okay, so the third and final thing I want to share with you, though there are many more, is that, if we had enough time, I'd share even more with you. But the third thing I want to share was that being too aggressive in my assumptions when looking at a deal can be very harmful. So if I'm too aggressive on the front end before I actually get the deal or before we actually start working on the deal, it can really cause a lot of problems in the future. So my first multifamily deal, I went from doing a small single family portfolio to 225 units. It was my first multifamily deal. And you say, oh my gosh, that sounds outrageous. Well, I was a part of a team, and I did, I had my contribution to that, being a part of the management of that and raising money and doing things to be a part of that team. So I didn't do all of it, but I was a part of this team. And I went out to this property in Texas and walked a bunch of the units. There were some down units. There were some issues with the property. It's a Class C, working class type of property. And basically, we felt like we had a great business plan. Everything was all set up. It was going to go perfectly and tie it off with a bow. And it didn't go that way, right? So after we closed on the property, we realized there were some plumbing issues. There were some foundation issues that did not come up on the inspection, which can be an issue, right? So this stuff did not come up. And so we had some cash reserves. We obviously didn't plan for that. It was a substantial expense, and our cash position got low. So we assumed, our assumptions, we were a little bit aggressive in certain ways where we assumed certain things were going to go well that didn't necessarily go well. Now, if you assume, right, there's a saying about the word assume, that if you take that word and you break it down to different pieces, you make an ass out of you and me. So ASSUME was the word assume. And so that's what's happened. We made an ass out of ourselves in certain ways. And so I think what we learned from that is You have to just really make sure that you fire test things, and obviously experience, there's really no substitute for experience. And over time, maybe we could have got a different property manager, maybe a second, person in there to take a look at, have some contractors go look at it, done some other things to try to make sure, maybe even scope those particular lines to make sure that we kind of knew what was going on before we got into the property. So that would have been important. Now, I wanted to make a little side note about what it means to be conservative in your underwriting, because people use this term a lot, and they're not always conservative. Sometimes they're just, having wishful thinking. And nobody, I don't think, is, very few people are trying to deceive people or trying to deceive themselves, but it's really important that we are conservative. So a few things I wanted to mention that are important. So obviously, from this story, cash reserves are really important. Have enough cash. We raise more money than we need to make sure we have cash in a deal, just to make sure that it performs well. The second thing is that your cap rate at exit, right? So if you're buying something at a 4% cap rate, it's considered conservative to raise the cap rate when you sell to like a 4.5% cap rate or maybe a 5 cap, right? So you're raising it higher. So what that does with the numbers is that makes the numbers actually come down and be less, it makes them look less sexy at the end. So you're just trying to say that, hey, if things don't go exactly what we want, we want to make sure that we underwrite this well. Now, there is obviously a balance in underwriting deals, right? That, if you're too rosy and you're pie in the sky and Pollyanna, everything's going to go great, it's going to be perfect. You know what? It may not go that way. It probably will not go that way, and you'll probably be disappointed. Now, on the other hand, if you're too conservative and you're just too like, oh, we only are going to buy things that are, we're so conservative. I've seen this before with different operators. They just don't do any deals. So it's a challenge too to try to say, how do you find that sweet spot of not being too conservative where you don't get any deals, or to be too aggressive and try to stay kind of in that happy medium. So really important that you slow down, you take a look at, what happens if things do slow down, because at some point, things are going to slow down. Right now, rent growth is going crazy. That's another one that we look at, is what is the rent growth in that particular market. I mean, at the time of this video, we're seeing like 10 to 15% national rent growth, which is just huge. Like I can't remember the last time. It's going absolutely nuts right now. So, but we also have to assume that things may slow down. So we're never going to underwrite in a deal 15 or 12% rent growth. We got to write maybe 3 or 4% or something like that in a particular market. Even though we're seeing a lot of growth, we want to be very, very conservative on what we think is going to happen in the future, because we can't assume things are going to go to the moon and they're not going to come back down. So my hope for you with this video is that you got some takeaways, and that when you have a particular deal, whether you're new to real estate in multifamily investing or you've been doing this a while, that you can dance a little jig and say that you grew from not only your experiences, but also the experiences of others. So hopefully you'll walk away saying, I feel more like a genius because I learned from the mistakes of Bronson. So I think it's important, and there's power when we share these stories. So when you go to meetups, when you go to meet other people and operators, these stories are really what is important to ask about. So if you meet other people, hey, tell me your worst story. Tell me if just tell me the best story. Tell me what happened where something didn't go well. And if someone doesn't have a story like that, they're either A, inexperienced, which is fine, just means they don't have the experience, or B, they're just not being fully forthright with you. And I'd be very cautious to invest or to partner with anybody who just is not being forthright, not sharing those things. So I think it's really important. So, hey, I want to share this great quote with you. I thought it was good. It's from Paul Tudor Jones, the hedge fund manager. And it says that sometimes failure is merely chasing you off the wrong road and onto the right one. So it's important that, when you make mistakes, when you look at things that in your life, not just multifamily, but other things, that, things that don't go according to plan, those can be huge learning opportunities and can help get you where you want to go. So just really keep that in mind as you look forward with your investing career. But I want to know from you in the comments, what's your biggest real estate investing mistake? Our community could really benefit from it. I would love to hear it. I read all the comments. I would love to see from you, what's the biggest challenge or the thing that you faced that's been a mistake for you in real estate. It would help us. Consider subscribing to this channel. Also, if you're interested in hearing more about what can go wrong in multifamily deals, you can check out this video. We're gonna do more videos about investing, inflation, how you can profit in this time. So check out this playlist. Look forward to seeing you on the next video.